Hi, everyone. Welcome to the panel about testing go-to-market strategies. We're going to look at some of the misconceptions, mistakes, some successes of one of the, I think, biggest pain points of startups. I'm Noah Orbach. By background, I spent a few years trying to find go-to-market strategies in several startups, Hybo, MyHeritage, Voom Insurance, in most of them in early stages. And after I got tired of struggling with the hard work of finding go-to-market strategy, a good one, I moved to do coaching, and I now work with founders and startup leaders to help them kind of on the cross of management and business development. I'm going to let the team, the panel, introduce themselves. Adi, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Adi. I joined GEM Security as the first employee. I joined them just when they were an idea. It was 3 founders and an idea. And after just 2 years, recently, and I think it's been 2 months, we were sold and acquired by Wiz, which was a very interesting and great success. Probably only happens in cyber, but good luck to all non-cyber startups as well. Prior to that, I led business development at Team 8, where I led a huge CISO community of about 400 CISOs that were all very focused on very close relationships, which also really helped with GEM Security later on, but also led all of the go-to-market motions of all portfolio companies. And as some of you may know, Team 8 grew in those years from focusing just on building companies and having, let's say, 5 to 7 companies to suddenly 20 companies, which at some point I had to work for and with. And started my career really differently, actually, with NGOs and education tech, where I also joined a startup as the first employee and grew to be COO. So did it twice. It worked well. And that's it. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Adar.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Giga. Giga is a B2B marketplace for manufacturing. We manufacture in our marketplace robotics parts, aerospace, medical devices. So the trust barrier is very, very high. And the market is pretty traditional. And I didn't come from that market. So it posed a lot of go-to-market challenges and things that we've done wrong and some things we've done right. So I'm very excited to speak to you today about some of the stuff that we did. Before Giga, I had a business for marketing consulting, B2B marketing. I served organizations that had like traditional markets and that were not very easy to get to. So I had some experience doing that. That's about me. I'm excited to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Daniels. I started my career part of the early team of a startup called HiredScore here in Tel Aviv. We just sold to Workday recently. Have been very lucky to be part of the founding team of A-Team. We are a marketplace for teams of engineers, product managers, designers. We've grown that business to about $60 million GMV, which has been awesome. And I live in New York now, back and forth, but I just want to say I'm so stoked about the Tel Aviv tech ecosystem. I've lived in the Bay Area in New York. Walking around this building today, I'm honored that you guys would listen to me. I just think it's the best tech ecosystem in the world. So thanks for joining. Excited to talk.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ori Levy. I manage sales for Connect Team. Pretty new, just a few months in. But I've been running sales and go-to-market teams for more than 20 years now. I spent about 8 years at Dynamic Yield, which is pretty well known by now, from the day we started until we sold twice. That was a fun experience. And before that, I ran my own company for a while, and I was part of another company that was sold to Intel called Telmap. But this is really, really early on. We were the predecessors of Waze. We did navigation systems for cell phones when they didn't have GPS. That was a challenge. So I've been doing this for a long time, and one of the you just mentioned this. One of the nice things that I've seen is what's happening here today. We were doing go-to-market when we didn't even know what that is. I used to go see customers and do what today I would call pre-sales, and they would just tell me, get on a plane. So the fact that the Tel Aviv ecosystem and the Israel ecosystem now is starting to know what it's doing, for lack of a better word, is a pleasure, and I think this is a good example of it. I'll try to give you some insights from these years.
Thank you. I'm going to start with some of the questions that a lot of, when you start your go-to-market strategy, a lot of the founders I work with, and also when I was working in HiBob, some of the big questions that we always didn't know the answer. And the first one is for you, Ori. When I think there's always a question, do we do inbound or outbound? Do we do both? How do we try? Where do we put our limited resources in?
Yeah, that's another thing that we didn't even distinguish way back then. It was called, go get him. Yeah, but it's a real question. If we're talking about early stage and very early stage, then it becomes clear. It's more vague actually later, I think. The first thing you need to do is define who's your ICP. If you know who you're selling to, then you can define if you want to do it inbound and outbound. And everything I'm saying here is generalized, but it's a good rule of thumb. If your ICP is usually smaller companies, then usually you would go to inbound strategies, right? If you're selling into enterprise, it would usually be outbound. But it's more than that. It's how complex your sales cycle is. It's what's the skill set of your team. Do you even have a team that can do inbound? Inbound is complex. It's expensive. It's super expensive. Many times you don't understand how expensive it is. So if you're just starting and you know who your customer is and they're enterprises and you can name them and you can name a role and you have a very clear ICP, then usually outbound is the way to go. It's also cheap. You can hire a couple of SDRs. If you're very early on, you can do it yourself. There's tools now. You can buy lists. You can do LinkedIn, whatever. You can do outbound. Setting up an inbound motion very early on is only if you're very clear that you're going to sell into SMB at mass scale, and if you've got the skill set to do it, and it's going to take a lot of time and money to do it. You need to have big enough pockets for it. Later on, most companies take a hybrid approach. You're not going to stick usually just to inbound or to outbound. You're going to start with one and continue to the other. And then one of the things that I've seen is, and we all sort of know it in our hearts, companies have a DNA. So if you're an inbound company, going into outbound is a lot of times a real challenge. For example, now at Connect Team is a wonderful inbound machine, amazing, well-oiled machine, and we're starting to do outbound, and that's a challenge. It's changing the DNA of the organization, and vice versa. When I did dynamic yield, was absolutely enterprise, super high touch. We knew exactly who we're selling to, and we never really did inbound well, even later on. So early on, you need to choose, the way I feel, you need to choose one. And then when you're established, you can go into a hybrid approach, but know that it's going to be hard. It's going to be a hard transition, and it's going to take a lot.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think especially on the fact that the short term is, you can see really great results if you, on the outbound effort very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Much cheaper, yeah.
Yeah. Great. Anyone
Ryan,
else?
You want to disagree?
Ori is really interested in a disagreement.
Oh, Ryan promised he's going to disagree to everything I said.
It's coming.
I mean, I agree. I think at the early stages, outbound is the way to go, just because setting up a good inbound machine just takes a lot of time and effort and dialing in everything. Just waste your time, and at the beginning you don't really know the messaging, the right messaging, the right positioning. All of these are just question marks, and to set up a good inbound machine, you need to get a lot of content. You need to set up the funnel correctly, and if you don't do it right, you're just going to waste a lot of resources and time. And outbound is a very quick way to get things going. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I would say that. It's nice to do cold outbound, but it's better to do warmish outbound, and especially in this era, where there's so many automated tools and AI is becoming big, and just the emails are much more personalized. The bar is very high, so you need to stand out in your outbound efforts, and if you can leverage relationships to do that, that's standing out. You need to be creative in how you do outbound. And many people say that cold calling is dead. I think that in many industries, in our industry specifically, like cold calling it works really well because AI is still not there, and AI is really good at writing text, but still talking, you still humans win. So I would definitely try that. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think outbound works well, but it's not as easy as it used to be,
Yeah,
especially
just LinkedIn,
online.
Yeah, Sales Navigator and automations and stuff like that doesn't work anymore.
In my experience, we've tried in several startups sending letters, and that was really effective. Everyone opens it. Yeah, actual letters with stamps.
Yeah, I will say one thing that I forgot earlier. If you do have an inbound machine and you built it, you're golden. It's wonderful. I remember one CEO told me that he understood that he really got it when he took the entire company to a 1-week retreat. And when he came back, the inbound efforts paid for that trip. While they were on vacation, the company was closed. So if you're there, that's wonderful. It's just really hard to get there.
Great. The other big question is, should we go direct or indirect? Shall we go through partnerships or just try to do it ourselves? Because there are a lot of pros and cons. So Ryan, what was your take on that?
Yeah, so taking a step back, at A-Team, we're selling teams of engineers and developers, right? And it's a sale that's kind of weird because it's like tech enabled to form the team, but like you need to trust us and trust that the people we're giving you are good. And I'll maybe just take another step back and kind of agreeing with what you said, but there's a framework I really like that Peter Thiel put. No, I disagree. You didn't have the framework. So Peter Thiel has this framework that's so simple, but I come back to it like once a month. And it's basically like, look at your LTV. How much are you charging your customer? And based on the LTV, you'll know how much you can invest in acquiring that customer. Again, really simple. But if like your LTV is low, then you need to do like having an inbound system could really work. But if your LTV is like, $10,000, $100,000, $1 million, probably inbound won't work that well. And so for us, our LTV is pretty high, right? People are spending 150, 200K a year on a developer, and we have teams of 5 or 6. It's like big sales. And we realized partnerships could work because people need credibility for talent, like about us, like who's good. So that was like our first insight is we have high LTV. Partnerships could be a way to like reduce that takes a lot of work to set up, but to reduce is like worth investing in to get after that big LTV. Okay, everybody knows LTV, right? Lifetime value, and okay. What I guess, and so the question you asked is, how do you decide to do partnerships? And I think you have to talk to your customers first, like before you even investigate partnerships, and try to sell to them first. And once you understand their pain points, which is just like classic founder journey and product market fit, which is interesting, you start to see like who do they go to when they're trying to solve that problem. And if they keep going to the same types of people, that could be a partnership for you. There's a second question that maybe we can get to later, which is like, does that partner have an incentive to help you sell? But like, I'll tell a quick story. Like we had this idea that like AWS and Google Cloud could be a good channel for us because people are buying cloud credits to when they build websites. And if we sell them to developers, maybe AWS wants to help us sell developers to their clients. And then like it occurred to us, like no credible person has ever reached out to their AWS rep, like, hey, do you know any good engineers? Like it's just an insane. So like, but we started seeing, I'll talk more about it in a bit, but we started seeing, for example, that most founders go to their investor and say like, can you help me hire? So VCs, awesome partner for us. And so I would just think about like, really seriously, if there is so that's one, is who do they go to when they need help? And two is, do your customers maybe have someone else pay for their pain point, right? So like a lot of companies will sell benefits through employers to employees, B2B to C kind of thing. That's a great partner. But you only know that when you go to the employees first and figure out like, oh, they really need this thing and someone else is paying for it, so we can go to that person. So just to summarize, start with the customer, understand what their pain points are, understand how they solve them. And if there's a person they go to a lot that they trust to give them that answer, that maybe could be a good partner for you.
I agree completely with the process of starting with the customers and understanding pain points and then moving to partners. But I would add on top the way that I viewed it is I focused, we had 2 years to build something big and then we got sold. And what I did in terms of partnerships, and I looked at every single partner as a strategic account. mapping out the partner, understanding the relationship, ensuring that they trust me as if they're my customer, that I'm selling to them, that they could be my champion, that they understand my product as well as I do, that they can understand the challenges that my customer is experiencing as well as I do, and that resonates. So in building those type of partnerships and building them and looking at them as a strategic relationships, whether it's someone as big as AWS or a reseller that can then later on help us with just sales, mapping out the organizations and ensuring that they view me as strategic as much as I view them. And it's about trust at the end of the day. As much as a customer at the beginning would buy you for your product and then trust, a partner would then usually start with you, especially when you're emerging tech, because they trust you and that they see the potential. But it's on you to prove that.
I think it's a great point. And also, when you sign a partnership with a partner, nothing happens. Like you just start.
Lower your expectations.
You're just starting to work in. Hi, Bob. I was there in very early stages to sign partnerships. We managed to sign partnerships, but they didn't sell anything because we didn't know how to sell and we didn't have product market fit at that stage. So we had 5, 10 partnerships signed and nothing happened.
I would add to that, by the way, that I focus on business development, but if I wanted to have a good partner, I needed sales to be on board. I needed sales to want to sell through partner. I needed sales to agree with me, for sales to see the potential. So a lot of it was also educating internally to tell them, listen, we get this 3 deals now for the cyber people of the world with Optiv or GuidePoint, and then you get 10 right after and 15 right after and many, many more. So getting them excited about actually selling, but also ensuring that they're incentivized for it equally is very, very important if you want a partnership to succeed.
Yeah, I think I'll just add, sales can feel kind of unsexy. What to me is very exciting is it's just human psychology. And the best salespeople are kind of manipulative and creepy, but they really get it.
Salesperson right here.
A little manipulative.
Unsexy, manipulative. Okay, I wrote it all down.
We agree on that. But I guess what I kept coming back to for partnerships was it's all about their self-interest. And everybody goes to this channels, sales process, we're gonna add so much value to this channel partner and it's gonna be sick. And they're we signed the thing, we had this agreement we signed with Apollo. It took us 1.5 years. It was so hard. I would literally show up at their office and take meetings with them, and then we signed it and nothing happens. And there was no benefit to them. They did it because they wanted me to stop. The benefit was I stopped emailing them, probably, right? But there's some partnerships where you really understand what drives them, and it's not solving a pain point so much as it's in their interest. Now, revenue share could work. I don't really believe in it, but with VCs I talked about a minute ago, what they really care about is helping their portfolio companies and de-risking them. And hiring is really good. So we found that we could solve a pain point for VCs. And that was and selfishly, VCs want to do that. They want to be able to solve that problem. I'll just add one more point here, which is the pitch you have to your partners is very different than the pitch you have to the client. And that took us a long time to figure out. A mini story is when we found out about VCs as a channel because we were raising our Series A, and Rafael Uzan, who's the CEO of A-Team, who's a dear friend and probably one of the best fundraisers alive, told this awesome story about A-Team as cloud-based teams. He's we're going to take teams. They used to be on premises. We're putting them in the cloud. And VCs love this stuff. They're yeah, it's AWS for teams. We literally heard this. And they loved it. And so VCs were what a great way for my portfolio companies to hire. And so so the VCs would connect us to their portfolio companies. And they would be guys, we're AWS for teams. And companies would be what? You're going to put my employees in a cloud? What? So it just didn't work. And then we just refined our pitch. But realizing that we had to pitch very differently to the partners and get them excited, and then totally refine that based on everybody's own interest and problems was really neat. And that's where things started to work.
Yeah, I think the great point here is that the partners' incentives are often different than the end clients' incentives, and you have to understand them. Yeah.
I would say if you're early on, and I guess there's a lot in the room, it's really hard to do both direct and partners, unless it's strategic. So I know there's a lot of companies riding off the back of Shopify or AWS or Wiz and Microsoft, and there's or this VC go-to-market. Those are usually outliers. Usually your partners are channel partners, referrals, integrators, resellers. if you're early on, you're not going to do both. And if there's one thing I learned is you're not going to wing it doing a partnership program because you're just going to fail. And the worst part is you'll disappoint them once. And then when you're ready, you're going to call them up and they won't want to work with you because you disappointed them already.
So what would you suggest to do early on? Choose one or just do direct?
Well, if there's strategic, then I would take that. But if not, I would do direct. Usually you need a team. I've tried to do partnership programs for many, many years. It always failed until we hired a team.
Okay, great, thanks. Now to Adar. I think that if you're in the cyber industry here, especially here in Tel Aviv, you have a lot of others that have done a lot of great things before, and you have a lot of people to learn from and companies, successful and less successful. But if you're trying to do something else in a new industry, that's more challenging. So how did you manage with this challenge in a non-traditional industry?
Yeah, so I think this answer holds true to every startup, but it's especially true when you don't have much use cases to rely on. Get intimately familiar with your ICP. And by intimately familiar, I mean not only like demographics or company size or industries, but think about like all the nuances, like psychological triggers and relationships with their colleagues, and how do they want to move forward in their life, and what kind of situation in their business applies to your specific case when they want to buy from you, and what they think about the competitors. You get really, really deep. You can't go too deep regarding that. And when you start doing that research, you get more and more clarity on what you need to do and how you need to position yourselves against the competition and against what's already out there, and what content you need to create and what channels you want to be in. It just gives you a lot of context that is incredibly valuable. And for us, that learning was first of all talking to customers a lot, like hundreds of customers, until we started figuring out like patterns that really worked. And that also means like recording those calls and sharing them and actually watching those calls, and using like tools to record those calls automatically, because you never remember to actually record. But also like there are public spaces where people talk about your competition, people talk about the incumbents. People talk about a lot of things. And another strategy that was really, really valuable for us was hiring people from the industry that brought their insights into the company. That was crazy valuable, because they brought on like all the things that worked with the competition, but all the things that didn't work, like all the problems and all the pain points and all the things that their customers complained about. And we realized like what's our unique positioning and what's our unique messaging and what we need to do in order to go to market more effectively. So that was really valuable. And I think that holds true to every startup, but especially if you don't have enough context.
Can you give us an example of what were some of the insights that you got and how it changed your go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our space, there are incumbents. There are companies that are like the digital manufacturers that already exist. But we realized that one of the main concern for customers was that they cannot collaborate with the manufacturers that they connect them to. They just hold it like in a black box. And that was like repeating itself over and over again in forum discussions, in customer conversations. That was a real frustration. So it's not only that we built a lot of the product around that, but it's also like the positioning and the stance that we took and the messaging was really around like that. And another insight was that a good ICP for us is someone that uses the competition, because if they use the competition, they're already very educated about the problem and about what's already out there. And what we only needed to do is say, okay, do you identify with these and these challenges? Yes, okay, so move to us. And that was very effective. Now, one of the unique things in our ICP is do they use the incumbents or not? And that's like a trait that you don't put in like demographics.
Great, and I love the word intimate. Get intimate with your customers.
Yeah, know everything. You need to know, like, there's nothing like too much.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the stage where you start testing and things don't go so well. And this question is for you, Adi. So you try one or two go-to-market strategies or channels, and they don't work. How do you know if the problem is in your go-to-market strategy, or you just don't have a product-market fit, and no matter what you do, it's not going to work?
Well, first of all, I think it's always, first of all, a product market fit issue because we're always testing it and we're always checking it and it's never complete. And I think it was Yechiel who said it in the last session that if you think you have it, you probably don't. And when you build your go-to-market strategy, you assume that you're not there yet and you're there to support getting there. You're there to support product, you're there to support engineering, you're there to support the founders, you're there to support all of go-to-market, and so that's what your strategy should be doing. And the testing that you're testing should really help you out. And I really connected to what Adar said. When we started GEM in the first few months, and the acquisition later happened, but the first thing that they asked us, wait, isn't Wiz doing this? And well, now they are, but before they weren't. So it took us sort of market education of getting to the right calls, understanding what is really the problem. And we came ourselves with the know-how. Our founders ourselves came from really the trenches of doing the problem that we were trying to solve and coming to the same challenges all the time. But we didn't assume that we knew everything. Our goal really in the first 3 months, and a lot of it was sort of the relationships that we brought in, we had 150 calls with global CISOs. And we listened to every single one of these calls. We recorded single one of these calls, and then I even accidentally sent it once to one of the CISOs, and that's a mistake that you shouldn't do. So learn not to share the call later on. But what we did is on these calls in the beginning, we had this deck assuming different things, and then after about 50 calls, we lowered it to 2 slides and about 6 to 10 questions. And the more that we had of these calls, the more that we understood, the more we were able to then tailor 1 slide of saying, this is what we're thinking, 2 slides, these are the problems that we're seeing. Which one resonates with you? How are you solving them today? And in that process, really the goal for what we were doing for go-to-market strategy is supporting product market fit. Because each one of the calls, each one of them really helped us go back and say, well, later on when we listened to 150 calls, we segmented them by industry, by size, by potentially country or geography, by type of, let's say for us, is how advanced are they in our type of industry, in cloud specifically for us. And then we were able to categorize their problems, see if there are any differentiations. And we learned later on that in the calls, we have to repeat. We have to repeat the problem. And then usually when we repeat the problem, it gives us 1 layer deeper. So when I did the go-to-market strategy, bottom line is it always supports product market fit. You're never there. You always have to go back and doubt what you did before, readjust, and then talk problems and not only solutions, and ensure you're asking a lot of questions.
So not just finding the right product market fit and then go with your go-to-market strategy and grow, but kind of mix them and they continue to grow together. And use the strategy to learn more on your product market fit.
Completely. I think be humble. You don't know anything. And it keeps on changing as well. And if we sold to one of the biggest oil and gas companies in Australia, but then we sold to the biggest risk rating companies. The teams thought differently. They had the same problem, but they used different ways to describe it. They pulled budgets from different places, and each one of those spaces that we ended up selling to taught us a lot. And I think one of the biggest things as well is once you're starting to design partner, once you're starting to work, be really responsive and ensuring that and this is the way I think I was able to support product or engineering, is us working together. We were able to be really responsive to any customer that we were working with, and having a Fortune 500 suddenly work with a startup that told you that in 2 weeks got the feature that they wanted. usually you'll be able to then sell it to them and the product market fit will get better. So it all sort of comes together, I think.
Nice, Adar.
One thing that really helped us is to become very methodological about the way we test things and experiment with things. Me personally, that's something that I just did on my own, but maybe there's a best practice for that. I just created a table with columns that each of them describes like something that I'm going to test. And in each time period, I fill the row in what I'm going to, what's the next period is going to look like. And in each column, there was like, what's the messaging that I'm going to take? What are the channels that I'm going to test? And I color-coded the results of the certain rows. Like green was like, I'm confident about this strategy, and yellow is like, I'm so. Red is didn't work. You need to try something else. And but that framework gives you the mindset of like, this is experimentation, and you're making progress with experimentation. It's not something that you just need to have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you're going to progress towards that go-to-market fit, which is, like Adi said, like in parallel with the product market fit. You're going to test, you're going to get to more greens, and you're going to make more progress, and it forces you to do this experimentation.
Nice, I love the color coding part and making it a process of learning.
I don't know if it's like, do it at your own risk. I mean, that's just something I did to my own and thought that it's a good thing to do.
So yeah, my next question is quite relevant, and maybe I'll ask you, Ori. When you start a test, we're talking about testing go-to-market strategies, but how do you know that you're in the right direction? How do you measure it? And what can actually be a misleading sign? Sometimes you feel like you're in the right direction, but you're not.
I would say, and this also relates in a way to the previous question. I think you and I discussed this. I grew up on the notion that the product is not important, and it's execution and sales and marketing. And I'll start by saying that's wrong, okay? Sort of an 80s approach where American approach, you can have a shitty product, but if you have good sales and marketing, it's gonna be amazing. That's wrong for the tech space. Product is king. If there's anything you leave the room with, at least from my angle, product is king. All the rest comes on top of product. So relating to the previous question, I think everybody knows in their gut if you have product market fit or not. You're going to have data that supports it, and you're going to look around and do your testing, but deep inside, you know. Just trust your gut on it. It's not always going to be accurate, and sometimes it's going to be in the middle, but you're going to know. When we're talking about go-to-market strategies, there's a lot of things that confuses you along the way. First thing that I would say is to stick to the actual metrics that are important. We've got so many measurements today, right? If your CAC is decreasing, that's great. If your NRR is probably the North Star, right? If you've got a good NRR, 100% plus, you're increasing, all of those metrics are going to be great. If the customers are saying good things about your product and are expanding, that's good. But one thing to note is that the customers need to put their money where their mouth is. And those are places that are going to confuse you. What you might call vanity matrix. Your salespeople are really busy. That doesn't mean anything. You've got more website traffic, more social traffic. You've got more trial signups. You've got, pilots. You've got amazing pilots with Fortune 500 companies.
No one is paying.
If they're not paying, it's worthless. I mean, it's a good indicator along the way, right? You might be able to raise a seed round using it, but the number of times I've seen these crash and burn. I tried to raise a seed round many, many years ago, and I had Walmart as a design partner. That loved it. They flipped for it, and they didn't buy it later, not to mention they didn't say good things to the investors. So you can really get confused with that. At the end of the day, the real matrix or SaaS matrix will speak, and I think they're really obvious. Exactly like product market fit, you know it. You just need to convince yourself.
Thank you. Adi, this one is for you. We talked about the relationship between the product market fit and the go-to-market strategy. I want to ask about the design partners. How can you use your design partners to help you with your go-to-market strategy?
So we also had a methodology for design partners. In the beginning, the Alababala, right? So the first design partner,
How do you
just
translate
whatever.
that?
Let's start working. You do this, I do this, and then I think after 2, we realized, okay, this doesn't work. This Israeli messy way doesn't work, especially not with the Europeans and who are worse, but then the US as well. So then we decided to have a structure. And the idea is, first of all, to set expectations, set a schedule, and set a process, and ensure that there's always 2 champions. Really tactically, the first thing was a deck. Here's a deck. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a design partner. By the way, here, if you can agree to sign a contract around it, wonderful. And then the next was, this is the timeline. We are meeting every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, it could be only 30 minutes. We won't take too much of your time. We know that you're busy. But in those 2 weeks, we are giving you value. So in every single 2 weeks, we presented something. We presented a finding. We presented something that is helpful to them. And on the way, we got tons of feedback. And then usually in the beginning, our first design partners were like 4 or 5 months. Some of them ended up being 6 months, and then we were sold. But then later on, we also ensured that it's only 3 weeks and to 4 weeks, and that ideally at the end they would buy. So ensuring that it's a methodical process, that we are setting expectations, but also that we know what we want back from them. But most importantly in that process that we built was that we give them so much value as part of having us for these 3-4 months that they usually ended up buying. I mean, 90% of our design partners bought GEM. And beyond that, what I was saying in terms of champions and stakeholders internally, we always had 2. We had a technical, usually it was the CTO who was pre-sales, post-sales, did everything until we started recruiting more. And then we had an executive sponsor who usually held the relationship really closely or brought the deal really closely. And that was never sales, by the way. It was always someone who was actually knew intimately. The customer understood what we could do, and then could also help transverse through the organization when needed, or have really intense calls should you want to fix anything, maybe we didn't meet expectations. You could always balance out and have a good cop, bad cop. So that's generally what we did. I will also add that we tried to ensure that we didn't only have the Israeli startups as a design partner, which is the easiest one. Fiverr loves it. Probably most of you have done a design partnership with Fiverr. You could raise your hand, but I'm sure that it was like most of you did. They're great. We did too. But we also had huge companies from the Bay Area and huge companies even in South Africa and in Europe that agreed to design partner with us. A lot of it was trust and also curiosity and exploring something that's new in the industry. We also started a new tangent in cybersecurity. So ensuring that on one hand you have a process, 2, that you're building that trust continuously, you're providing value, you're balancing out the relationship between tech and business, but also that you have the design partners across different industries, across different sizes, but most importantly, don't just do the Israelis.
Can I just add
Yeah,
something?
thanks, Ryan.
Well, actually, I think I'll go back to the product market fit thing just for a second. I just wanted to add, and this sounds weird, I feel like product market fit is kind of like getting married. It's like, if you're lucky, you do it once. Maybe if you're crazy, you do it a few times in your life. But it's like so hard. And I honestly think, to your point, I guess I'll disagree that I think a lot of startups, here we go, can actually do really well without product market fit by just selling really well and good execution. Which is if I really want to do my analogy about marriage, dating, whatever, you can date a lot without finding the one and still have pretty good relationships. And I don't know, I think a lot about finding real product market fit is ridiculously hard. You can still sell and make a lot of money, but not, and the misleading metric is that revenue is going up. Because as you get more customers, you get more revenue, you can invest in more sales, and you keep just putting money into sales. And so I think the really elusive thing that is so rigorously, and to your point about methodologically complex, I mean, it's so hard, is I would look up cohort analysis. For those that aren't doing it, it's essential, which basically just, rather than looking at revenue going up over time, which is great, every month are you selling a higher percentage than the month before of the leads that come in? And that, like, and if you're refining, which is like, I don't know, back to dating, like, are you like dating the right people? Like, are you refining? But like, and so the sales is just getting in front of the right people with the right pitch, but you have to keep refining. And every month it should get a little bit better. And eventually it just gets so good. And then the revenue really starts going crazy.
Yeah, I think it's so true. And sorry, I'm agreeing again. But I feel that especially when you have enterprise deals, that's really tough because you can have one or two big deals of, $500,000 and you're like, oh, wow, we have a product market fit, and you can run for a year or two with it and nothing happens. So that's really challenging. Okay, I think now we're going to move to the audience and see if there are any questions. Anyone? Yes.
There's kind of this strange imbalance about knowing your ICP while at the same time trying to find your product market fit, which almost seems to contradict each other at certain points. So where in the very, very beginning stages, when you might think you have an ICP that you really want to focus on, but things are bringing you elsewhere, especially now if you like start horizontal and you're like, never mind, I really want to focus on vertical, how do you think about that contradiction?
So let me repeat. So how do you know how do you balance the kind of knowing really well your ICP and kind of doing your own strategy and search?
What's the contradiction between finding product market fit and knowing your ICP?
Yeah, I think you don't have to be decisive about who your ICP is. You just need to, it's like searching for gold, right? You think you know, you try to test it, you test it like everything else. And for us, we thought that we should target supply chain managers. We ended up targeting engineers. But that's part of the process of iteration, is also iterating on the ICP. We thought that we should target like larger companies that we actually did. That's another thing. But getting intimately familiar with your ICP doesn't necessarily mean you need to know who your ICP is from the get-go. But just start researching and refining and get like these little nuances of excitement from the right people, and then you start dialing in that specific thing, and then you start researching the ICP that you found, right? So it's an ever evolving like research process.
So similar to how go-to-market strategy impact the product market fit, kind of looking for ICP is also iterations that you do and impact your product market fit.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Go ahead.
We're talking very freely about how hard it is to find product market fit, but when you're having conversations internally, founders, starting teams, it's hard to have a conversation around we don't have product market fit. And I'm wondering if you have any best practices for how to communicate, how to have those conversations, how to keep everyone open to experimentation, to testing.
So how to communicate to your founders or managers that you actually don't have a product market fit? That's a real challenge to the CEO who loves the product and thinks there's a good product market fit.
So I want to say that is such a good question. Yeah. And I've been an early employee or, at a few startups. Founders have this ridiculously weird job of being intellectually honest with themselves while kind of lying to everybody else, right? Like, yeah, right, because you have to tell your early employees and your clients and your investors, like, this is working, and you have to deep down know it might not be working. I think you, as an early employee, you really want to find a founder who will allow a spirit of intellectual honesty within the company. That's like one of the first things you should vet when you're thinking about working at a company. And that is probably the difference between winning and losing as a company. But I would say maybe, so that's me like theorizing, but two practical things. One is be accepting of a founder who's running against the wall and just not willing to be honest for a little bit. It's like, just be accepting of that. Their job is to be like a visionary. But two is, it is your job as an early employee to find the data and find those real stories. And That's what makes an early employee, I think, an exceptional early employee rather than just like helping push along. And if you can have the freedom at least to experiment and create your own culture of sort of experimentation and like, we tried this and we tested this against this and this worked and this didn't, or this worked 5, 10, 20% better. You can create an ecosystem, like even like a small pocket of that intellectual honesty within a company where the founders are having a hard time hearing it. I hope that helps. But it's an amazing problem that I think every startup deals with.
I completely agree. I would add that we got to a point of we talked a lot about being intimate, but like having such intimate conversations to mapping out who did the best calls, who does the pitch well, who does the demo well. We changed the demo order a couple of times to the point that it's after 6 months, we knew if this type of customer is very technical or if it's the CISO or if it's someone underneath, we mapped who should be on the call based on what each of us can bring to the conversation in terms of sort of founders and the first employee. And that really helped because on one hand, we were able to experiment. We were able to understand what works and what didn't. But then we were sort of able to then say, you're strongest at this, you go do this, and sort of push up each one of our strengths and then have it resonate back to the customer.
Okay, our time is up, sorry. Thank you very much, and thank you for the great panel members.